Fellow Toastmasters, guests, leading up to Tuesday's election, I was involved in a number of conversations about the Electoral College. So we weighed the pros and cons about the college. Some of it was a little bit heated now and then, but for the most part, it was rather collegial. Generally speaking, though, we talked about how the college works and what might happen if a candidate did not receive the necessary 270 electoral votes. So I, with the fervor of the partially informed, decided to share with my colleagues my information, which was a cornucopia of great things and little-known facts. And I was confident that the truths that I spoke would stand up to their misguided notions of inaccuracies. Fortunately, afterwards, when I decided to do a little electronic snooping, I realized that I actually did know a few things about the Electoral College. Now, there might have been a few technical issues upon which I could have been a little bit more precise, but in general, I was able to hold my own. So, allow me to share, if you will, a little bit about what I learned and what I now know about the Electoral College, in the hopes that, should you find yourselves involved in such a stimulating conversation, you'll be a little more prepared to weigh into the subject. Now, as I'm sure you probably all realize, the Electoral College really isn't a place. It's not an institution. It's a process. And in that process, we do two major things. First of all, we select electors. Those electors vote for the president and vice president. They forward their results to the Congress, who, once having tabulated those votes, declares we have a president-elect and a vice president-elect. Now, this process is constitutionally enshrined, so you realize that its imperfections, its very beings, are much like everything else in the Constitution. It's a result of compromise. And in this case, there was a trade-off between election of the president by a vote of the Congress or electing the president through a popular vote of the people. And so these decisions, of course, are driven by many considerations, such as slavery, regionalism, suffrage, big state issues versus little state issues. Now, the process has changed over the years, but today, when we vote for a presidential ticket, what we're really doing is voting for a slate of electors who then vote for president and vice president on our behalf, much as we vote for congressmen and senators who go to Washington and then vote on legislation on our behalf. Now, these electors are pretty much allowed to be selected by the states, and that's what the Constitution says. They don't provide any guidance, so the states select them, and in general, the candidate's party will make the selection of the electors. And as you probably know, the makeup of the electors for any one state is based on that state's congressional delegation. There's an elector for each congressman and each senator. We have 100 senators in the U.S. Congress. We have 435 representatives, plus 3 electors from the states of, from the District of Columbia. So that means the faculty of the Electoral College stands at 538, which means 270, which is 50% plus 1, is the absolute majority needed to elect the president and the vice president. Now today, today the electors are pledged to the winners, in most cases, for a state in a winner-take-all basis, with 2 exceptions. That's Maine and Nebraska. And they apportion their electors based on the congressional method. And in the congressional method, 1 elector is given to the popular vote winner in each congressional district within the state, and then 2 electors are given to the statewide winner of the popular vote. Now, according to the Constitution, the electors will then meet in their respective state capitals, and for the Washington, D.C., that would be in the district, and they will meet to cast their vote for president and vice president. And their meeting takes place on the Monday following the second Wednesday of December. And when they vote, they actually take 2 distinct votes. one vote for the president and a second vote for the vice president. Those votes are then tabulated and put in a document called Certificate of Vote. The certificate is sealed and forwarded on to the President of the Senate, who is our Vice President. As these votes come in, they're arranged alphabetically and unopened in 2 mahogany boxes. Alabama through Missouri, including the District of Columbia in one box, and Montana through Wyoming in the second box. Then, on the 6th of January, at 1 p.m., the newly installed Congress, who were just installed on the 3rd of January, will meet in a joint session of Congress. They'll unseal the certificates of vote, tabulate the results, and providing that a majority has been obtained, they will then declare the names of the President-elect and the Vice President-elect. Now, what should happen if the majority is not achieved? And this has happened a couple of times in our history. Well, in that case, the Constitution asks that the House elect the President and the Senate elect the Vice President. And it has some slightly different rules. In the House, each state's delegation receives but one vote, which means to elect the President, the candidate must get 26 votes. Now, in the Senate, the upper chamber, each senator is allotted a vote. And in accordance with the wording in the Constitution, a majority of the senators, which is 51, are needed to elect the Vice President. A majority of the senators, that terminology then precludes the Vice President from casting a deciding vote in the event of a 50-50 tie, because of course he's not a senator. Now, all this voting has to be completed by noon on the 20th of January, because that's when we inaugurate the President and Vice President. Well, there is a minor exception, that's this year, because the 20th is a Sunday. So instead, it will be held on a Monday. Now, in the event that a President or a Vice President are not selected, then the Speaker of the House, who is second in succession to the presidency, then will be the acting President until a President is elected. So in a nutshell, there you have it. That's how we select our President. And now you have a cornucopia of facts to ably engage in any conversation on the subject. Mr. Toastmaster?